2 hours after I received the keys to the Victorian house I'd dreamed about for nearly 15 years. My phone rang. It was my godson. "Helen," Ryan said cheerfully, "just wanted to let you know everyone's about 20 minutes away." I smiled. 20 minutes from what? A short silence. "The wedding." I laughed because I honestly believed he was joking. "What wedding?" "The one at your place." I stopped folding the last linen towel. "My place." "Come on, Aunt Helen, Celeste told you everything." "No." She hadn't. Before I could answer, Ryan continued talking as if we were discussing the weather. "There'll be around 100 guests. Caterers are already setting up outside. Don't worry, they've done this dozens of times." My stomach tightened. Ryan." "What?" "I never agreed to any wedding." Another silence. Longer this time. Then he laughed. "Very funny." "I'm serious." He sighed. "Helen, people are literally driving here from 3 different states. Please don't start this now." The line went dead. For a few seconds I simply stood there, holding the phone. The house was completely silent. Only the old grandfather clock in the hallway continued ticking. Tick. 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 Then I heard it. A truck. Another one. Then another. I walked toward the front window. 3 white catering vans rolled onto my driveway. Behind them came black SUVs. Luxury sedans. Flower delivery trucks. A refrigerated food trailer. I hadn't even unpacked all my books. I had owned the house for exactly 2 hours. The first man stepped out carrying a 6-foot floral arch. He smiled at me. "Morning, ma'am. Where do you want the ceremony?" I blinked. "I'm sorry." "The ceremony." He pointed toward the ocean. "Client wanted the arch facing the water." "I think you're at the wrong house." His smile disappeared. He checked his clipboard. "Rosecliff Manor." He looked back at me. "Owned by Mrs. Helen Whitmore." "Yes." "Then we're exactly where we're supposed to be." Before I could say another word, 2 more workers walked past me carrying expensive wooden chairs directly across my front lawn. No permission. No questions. As though my property had never belonged to me. Another van arrived. Then another. Within 10 minutes, strangers were everywhere. Someone measured my porch. Someone else unloaded crystal chandeliers. I watched a woman walk into my kitchen, carrying 6 enormous wedding cakes without even knocking. She opened my refrigerator. She frowned. Then she turned to one of her assistants. "Clear a shelf. The bride's desserts need refrigeration." My refrigerator. My kitchen. My house. And somehow, I had become the only person there who had absolutely no idea why any of this was happening. I thought the wedding was the disaster. I had no idea that the real nightmare hadn't even arrived yet. I should have called the police immediately. People have asked me that more than once. The truth is, I still believed there had to be some misunderstanding. Ryan wasn't a criminal. He was the little boy who used to spend Saturday afternoons reading adventure novels on the floor of my library. I had paid for his college textbooks. I had helped him buy his first car. I had even stood beside him when he married Celeste 3 years earlier. Surely, he wouldn't deliberately do this. I stepped onto the porch and raised my voice. "Excuse me." The workers barely looked up. One man continued hammering stakes into my lawn. Another climbed a ladder against the front columns of my house. Within minutes, white fabric draped across the porch like it belonged in a bridal magazine. Then I saw her. Celeste. She climbed out of a black SUV wearing oversized sunglasses, cream-colored trousers, and a headset clipped behind one ear. She wasn't dressed like a guest. She looked like a CEO arriving to inspect a construction site. The moment she noticed me, she smiled. Not a guilty smile. A confident one. "Helen." She walked toward me with open arms. "I knew you'd love the surprise." Before I could react, she hugged me. Then she turned toward a photographer. "Can you get one of us together?" The camera clicked twice. I stepped away. What exactly is happening? Celeste looked genuinely confused. Ryan didn't explain. He said there's a wedding. There is. In my house. She nodded. Of course. My permission was never requested. She laughed softly. Oh, Helen. You've always been too modest. I stared at her. I don't understand. She lowered her sunglasses. We're launching a new luxury wedding brand. She pointed toward the ocean. This house is the perfect venue. I felt something cold settle in my chest. You advertised my property. It wasn't officially yours when we started planning. I signed the closing papers this morning. Exactly. She smiled again. Now everything worked out perfectly. Worked out. As though buying someone else's home automatically included the right to turn it into a business. You need to stop this. Her smile faded for the first time. Helen, tell everyone to leave. She glanced toward the driveway. I'm afraid that's impossible. Why? Because guests have already paid. What? She opened her tablet. We sold 98 tickets. My heart skipped. 98. $1,200 each. I looked at her. Surely I had heard that wrong. She kept scrolling. Catering has been paid. The musicians. The florist. The photographers. The livestream crew. Everything's contracted. Then she looked directly into my eyes. If you cancel now, you'll destroy dozens of businesses. Not us. Not her. Me. That was the first time I realized this wasn't poor communication. It wasn't even manipulation. It had been planned. Every detail. Long before I ever held the keys to my own house. And somewhere inside that beautiful old mansion, I heard someone uncork a bottle of champagne. That sound was the moment I stopped believing this could be solved with a simple conversation. Took a slow breath. For 38 years, I had worked in public libraries. Whenever people panicked, they stopped noticing details. I had built an entire career by noticing them. So instead of arguing, I started watching. Every vendor wore the same black lanyard. Every crate carried the same company logo. Every invoice clipped to a clipboard listed one location. Rosecliff Manor. Not Helen Whitmore's residence. Just Rosecliff Manor. Like it was already a commercial venue. Interesting. Very interesting. I walked back inside. No one tried to stop me. No one even acknowledged that I was the homeowner. My foyer was now filled with flower arrangements taller than I was. The grand staircase had disappeared beneath white roses. Someone had covered my antique oak table with expensive linen. I reached out and lifted one corner. A young decorator rushed over. "Ma'am, please don't touch the setup." I looked at him. "This is my dining table." He smiled politely. "I'm sure the owner won't mind." I almost laughed. "I am the owner." His smile vanished. Before he could answer, another woman called his name. He hesitated, then walked away without apologizing. That told me everything. The staff genuinely believed someone else owned this house. Which meant someone had lied to every single contractor. I continued through the hallway. Every room had changed. The library I planned to fill with books had become a bridal suite. My sunroom held makeup stations, surrounded by bright studio lights. Even my bedroom door had a printed sign. Private bridal preparation. I quietly removed it, folded it in half, placed it inside my handbag. Evidence. When I reached the kitchen, I found 3 chefs unpacking seafood on my marble island. One of them looked up. "Excuse me, could you point me toward the service entrance?" "There isn't one." He frowned. "The floor plan shows one." "It doesn't exist." He exchanged a confused look with another chef. Then he unfolded a large blueprint. I stepped closer. It wasn't just a floor plan. It was my house. Every room. Every hallway. Every measurement. Even the hidden storage closet beneath the back staircase. Only, something was wrong. In the bottom corner, where the owner's information should have been, someone had covered it with a printed label. I leaned in just enough to read it. Venue manager, Celeste Mercer Events. No owner's name. No purchase date. No permit number. Nothing. Just her company. At that exact moment, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. Mrs. Whitmore. Yes. This is Patrick Donnelly with Harbor Mutual Insurance. His voice sounded unusually careful. I'm calling because we've received a certificate of liability listing your property as today's commercial event venue. I closed my eyes. Then I asked the question that changed everything. Who signed it? Who signed it? There was a brief pause. Then the insurance agent answered. The certificate lists you as the property owner. I am. But the commercial event authorization. He hesitated. Was signed electronically yesterday. Yesterday. That was impossible. I hadn't even owned the house yesterday. I'd like a copy. I'm afraid I can't email it until I verify your identity. You have my driver's license on file. That's true. Another pause. Mrs. Whitmore. His voice grew quieter. The signature doesn't resemble the one we have. I felt my heartbeat slow instead of quicken. People expect anger in moments like that. I've always preferred clarity. When can you send it? 5 minutes. I'll wait. I ended the call. For the first time that morning. I smiled. Not because I was happy. Because someone had finally made a mistake. A real one. Forgery wasn't a family disagreement. Forgery was evidence. I walked back toward the front hall. The house had become almost unrecognizable. A string quartet was rehearsing beneath my staircase. Champagne glasses lined the entrance table. Florists carried orchids through my living room as though they'd worked there for years. Guests had started arriving. Expensive dresses. Designer suits. Luxury cars. Everyone looked impressed. No one questioned why the owner wasn't greeting them. Instead, they assumed I worked there. A middle-aged woman handed me her coat. Sweetheart, would you mind hanging this up? I looked at the cashmere coat in my hands. Then back at her. I don't work here. She laughed politely. Oh, you're adorable. Before I could answer, she was already walking toward the garden. 5 minutes later, an older gentleman slipped 2 folded $20 bills into my hand. For being so helpful. I stared at the money. $40. Someone had just tipped me. Inside my own house. I quietly placed the bills into my pocket. Evidence wasn't always paperwork. Sometimes, it was humiliation. My phone buzzed again. The insurance email had arrived. I opened the attachment. There it was. Commercial event liability certificate. Venue address. Rosecliff Manor. Property owner. Helen Whitmore. Then I reached the signature page. For several seconds, I simply stared. The signature looked nothing like mine. Not even close. But something else caught my attention. The timestamp. Signed 8:14 p.m. Yesterday evening. At that exact time, I had been sitting in a hotel nearly 80 miles away, waiting for today's closing appointment. I still had the hotel receipt, security footage, credit card records, even the restaurant bill from dinner. Whoever had forged my name had unknowingly created the perfect alibi. I looked up from my phone just as Noah quietly stepped into the hallway. He looked nervous. Helen, he lowered his voice. I think there's something you need to see. He glanced toward the study. They've been keeping all the contracts in there. Then he added the sentence that made my blood run cold. And one of them isn't for the wedding. Noah led me down the hallway without saying another word. He kept glancing over his shoulder, making sure no one was watching us. The music outside had grown louder. Laughter echoed through the house. Guests were already drinking champagne on my terrace, completely unaware that the owner of the property had never agreed to any of this. We stopped outside my study. The room was supposed to become my favorite place in the house. Instead, it had been turned into a temporary production office. 3 folding tables filled the center of the room. Laptops, printers, clipboards, stacks of folders, walkie-talkies, extension cords ran across my hardwood floors. Noah pointed toward a gray file box sitting beneath one of the tables. "Everything's in there. Why are you showing me this?" He swallowed. "Because my mom doesn't know I saw it." I looked at him. "You mean Celeste?" He nodded. "I heard her arguing with Ryan last night." "What about?" "They kept talking about deadlines." He hesitated. "And they kept saying they only needed today." "Only today." That sentence settled in my mind like a stone. What happens after today? I don't know. But they kept saying once the event is over, none of it will matter anymore. I crouched beside the file box. The folders were organized alphabetically. Catering, decorations, entertainment, florist, photography. Everything looked surprisingly professional. Too professional. Celeste hadn't thrown this together in a week. She'd been planning it for months. Then I found a red folder. No label. Just a single black stripe across the front. I opened it. The first page was a property valuation. Rosecliff Manor. Estimated market value. $2.84 million. That wasn't unusual. The second page was. It was a proposal from a luxury hospitality investment group. Their offer wasn't for a wedding. It was for the house. I turned another page. A redevelopment concept. The mansion would become an exclusive oceanfront event venue. Corporate retreats. Luxury weddings. Private galas. Estimated annual revenue. Over $3 million. I kept reading. My hands had gone completely still. There were architectural renderings. Parking expansions. Outdoor reception terraces. A commercial kitchen. Even plans to convert the library into a cocktail lounge. My library. Then I reached the final page. At the bottom, someone had highlighted a single sentence. Property acquisition, pending owner cooperation, or alternative transfer strategy. I read it again. Slower. Owner cooperation, or alternative transfer strategy. This wedding had never been the goal. It was only the first move. Someone wasn't trying to borrow my house. Someone was trying to take it. Before I could process what I was looking at, voices approached the study. Ryan. Celeste. Laughing. Noah's face turned pale. They can't see you with those files. He quietly locked the study door. The doorknob turned from the outside. Once. Twice. Then Ryan's voice came through the wood. Helen. A pause. We need to talk. But judging by the smile in his voice, he wasn't planning to ask me anything. He was planning to tell me what happened next. Ryan knocked again. This time harder. Helen, I know you're in there. Noah looked at me. I'll handle it. Before I could object, he opened the study door just wide enough to step outside, pulling it nearly shut behind him. I heard Ryan sigh. What are you doing in there? I was looking for the seating chart. You don't need to. I couldn't find it. There was a pause. Then Celeste spoke. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Noah, sweetheart, move away from the door. Silence. Another few seconds passed. Finally, I heard footsteps fading down the hallway. Noah slipped back inside and quietly closed the door. They bought it. For now. I exhaled slowly. We don't have much time. I photographed every page in the red folder. Then every contract. Every invoice. Every proposal. Years of working in libraries had taught me one lesson. Never remove the original. Copy it. Preserve it. Let people destroy themselves with their own evidence. One contract immediately caught my attention. Vendor agreement. Client: Celeste Mercer Events. Venue representative: Ryan Mercer. Owner approval. Pending. Pending. Not approved. Pending. Which meant every contractor in this house had entered the property, knowing they didn't actually have permission. They had trusted Ryan. Not me. Interesting. Very interesting. Then another document slipped from the folder. It wasn't professionally printed like the others. It looked rushed. Almost desperate. The title read, Emergency Property Access Authorization. Underneath, my forged signature appeared again. But this version was even worse. The spelling of my own name was wrong. Not Helen Whitmore. Helen Whitmore. 2 O's. I stared at it. Then I laughed. A quiet laugh. The first genuine one all day. Whoever had created these documents hadn't even bothered checking my legal name. That single typo could unravel every claim they intended to make. Noah frowned. Why are you smiling? Because people become careless when they think they've already won. Outside, applause erupted. The first guests had reached the garden. Music drifted through the open windows. Someone announced cocktails by the ocean. The wedding schedule was moving exactly as planned, which meant Celeste believed she still controlled the day. She didn't. Not anymore. My phone rang. Patrick Donnelly from Harbor Mutual. Mrs. Whitmore. Yes. I've reviewed the file personally. And I have a question. What is it? Were you ever contacted by a company called Atlantic Heritage Events? No. They submitted your insurance documents. I've never heard of them. Another silence. Then Patrick said something that made every piece suddenly fit together. They've insured 4 different historic properties in the last 8 months. I sat perfectly still. And, in every case, the ownership ended up changing within weeks. A cold chill ran through me. This wasn't their first victim. Rosecliff Manor wasn't a spontaneous opportunity. It was part of a pattern. A business model. Find historic homes. Exploit trusting owners. Create legal confusion. Force expensive settlements. Acquire the property below market value. My house had been chosen long before I signed the closing papers. I wasn't standing in the middle of a family argument. I was standing inside a carefully planned fraud. Then Patrick asked one final question. Mrs. Whitmore, has anyone advised you not to contact law enforcement until after today's event? I looked toward the hallway. Toward the laughter. Toward Ryan and Celeste entertaining guests, as if they already owned my future. Then I answered honestly. No. They didn't have to. They assumed I never would. Patrick's words stayed with me. This wasn't the first house. That meant someone somewhere had already lived through this nightmare. Maybe they had lost everything. Maybe they had settled because fighting was too expensive. Maybe that was exactly what Celeste expected me to do. She didn't know me very well. I thanked Patrick and ended the call. Then I looked at Noah. Do you trust me? He nodded without hesitation. Good. Because I'm going to ask you to do something difficult. What? I need you to tell me exactly where Ryan and Celeste keep their phones. He blinked. My mom never lets anyone touch hers. I don't need to. I only need to know where it is. He thought for a moment. Ryan leaves his in the production office when the ceremony starts. And Celeste. She carries hers everywhere. I smiled. That's exactly what I expected. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in 25 minutes. Guests filled the lawn overlooking the Atlantic. A string quartet played softly beneath the old maple trees. The floral arch framed the ocean perfectly. If someone had walked in at that moment, they would have thought it was one of the most beautiful weddings in New England. They would never have guessed. The owner was quietly building a case against the organizers. I walked outside. Several guests smiled at me. One woman touched my arm. "This property is breathtaking." "Thank you. Your company did an amazing job restoring it." "My company." She nodded. "The wedding planner said your family owns several luxury venues." I forced a polite smile. "No. We only own this one." She laughed. "I guess she's good at marketing." If only she knew. As I crossed the lawn, I noticed something that hadn't been there earlier. A black SUV had pulled into the driveway. No wedding logo. No florist. No catering company. Just dark-tinted windows. A man in a navy suit stepped out carrying a leather portfolio. He wasn't dressed like a guest. He wasn't dressed like staff either. Celeste spotted him immediately. For the first time all day, I saw genuine concern on her face. She hurried toward him before anyone else could. They spoke quietly, too far away for me to hear. But I didn't need to hear them. I watched their body language. The man handed her several documents. She flipped through them. Her smile disappeared. Ryan walked over. He looked at the papers. His expression changed just as quickly. Neither of them noticed. Noah standing beside me. "Who is that?" I whispered. "I've never seen him before." The man returned to his SUV. He drove away less than 2 minutes later. Celeste stood perfectly still, staring at the envelope in her hands. Then she did something strange. She looked toward the house. Toward my study. Toward the file box. Her eyes narrowed. She turned to Ryan. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read her lips. "Check the office." Ryan immediately ran toward the mansion. Noah's face went white. "They're checking the contracts. They know someone was in there." I calmly straightened the sleeve of my jacket. "No. They're hoping no one was." Ryan disappeared through the front door. 30 seconds later, his shout echoed through the entire house. "CLSD." Every conversation stopped. The music faltered. More than 100 guests turned toward the mansion. And for the first time that day, the perfect wedding no longer looked perfect. It looked like the beginning of a public disaster. Ryan burst through the front doors so hard that one of them slammed against the wall. His face had lost every trace of confidence. He marched straight toward Celeste, still holding the red folder in his hand. "Where are the contracts?" Guests fell silent. The string quartet stopped playing mid-song. Celeste kept smiling. "Barely. They're right there." "No. They're not." For the first time all day, her composure cracked. "What do you mean they're not?" "The copies are there. The originals are gone." I watched them from the edge of the lawn. Neither of them realized I had never taken a single original document. Only photographs. Ryan was panicking over nothing. And panic makes people careless. He lowered his voice, but not enough. "You said nobody knew about the acquisition proposal." Celeste grabbed his arm. "Stop talking. You told me that folder never left the office." "Ryan, did you move it?" I said stop talking. Too late. The guests nearest them had already begun whispering. Someone pulled out a phone. Someone else started recording. Exactly what Celeste had feared all morning. A public audience. Then another vehicle entered the driveway. This one carried the unmistakable seal of the town. A code enforcement SUV. Behind it came a police cruiser. Then another municipal vehicle. Conversations stopped completely. A uniformed officer stepped out first. Behind him came a woman carrying a clipboard. She looked around the property, then walked directly toward me. "Mrs. Helen Whitmore." "Yes." "I'm Karen Ellis with the Bar Harbor Code Enforcement Office." She extended her hand. We received multiple complaints regarding an unlicensed commercial event at this property. I nodded. I was expecting you. Celeste's head snapped toward me. You called them? No. I didn't have to. Karen opened her folder. Our office also received copies of several event advertisements using this address. She paused, and an anonymous package containing documents related to today's event. Celeste stared at Ryan. Ryan stared back. Neither one spoke. Noah quietly whispered beside me. I didn't send anything. I know. Neither had I. Which meant someone else had. Maybe a vendor. Maybe an employee. Maybe someone who had finally realized what kind of people they were working for. Karen looked at me again. Mrs. Whitmore, did you authorize this event? No. Did you sign these permits? No. She nodded once. That's all I needed to know. She turned toward the officers. Within seconds, they approached Ryan and Celeste. The wedding planner, who had controlled every second of the day, suddenly couldn't answer the simplest question. May we see your event permit? Silence. Your occupancy approval. More silence. Historic property authorization. Nothing. Guests began leaving their chairs. The groom's family looked confused. The bride burst into tears. Caterers quietly stopped serving food. Photographers lowered their cameras. The perfect wedding collapsed without anyone raising their voice. 3 months later, Rosecliff Manor was finally quiet. The lawsuit ended faster than I expected. Every forged document, every fake permit, every misleading advertisement, every email, every contract, it all became evidence. Ryan accepted a plea agreement. Celeste lost her event planning license permanently. Several civil cases followed. I never celebrated. Some victories don't feel like victories. They simply restore what should never have been taken. That autumn, I opened the house exactly as I'd always imagined. Not as a wedding venue. Not as a luxury resort. Just a peaceful retreat for readers and writers. The library became the heart of the home. Shelves filled every wall. The sound of champagne glasses was replaced by turning pages. One rainy afternoon, there was a knock at the front door. When I opened it, Noah stood there with a backpack over one shoulder. I was hoping. He smiled nervously. You might still have room for one more guest. I stepped aside. I've been saving the best room in the house. He smiled for the first time in months. As he walked toward the library, sunlight broke through the clouds and spilled across the old wooden floors. For the first time since I had received the keys, Rosecliff Manor finally felt like it belonged to its rightful owner.